I remember growing up being afraid of my dad, and I remember that there was this performance, perfection demands placed on me. I remember in elementary school coming home at the end of the week with papers stapled together with all your homework. I remember sneaking out behind somebody's house and taking the bad grades out and throwing them away. So I always had this, my dad's watching me. And when I got out of line, which was a lot sometimes, I'd get spanked really hard. I could be in public, and you just spank really hard. Real disciplinarian, real perfectionist guy. I remember in 6th grade coming home with my grades, and I had a great report card except for one D. And I thought, I can't bring that D home, so I went out in the woods and I got a pen and I tried to change the D grade to a B grade. And the harder I tried, the more messed up. And I knew when I got home that it was going to be not good. And so I didn't go home. I went to a neighbor's house and I hid because I was afraid to go home with that grade. And finally, my mom called all the neighbors and they found me. And 3 hours later, I came home, and it was just really hard. And there was some discipline, but it was just that constant reminder that you have to measure up. You have to get the grades. In sports, I remember not even being aware of the coach as much as I was aware of my dad in the stands. So if I screwed up, I looked at him. And I loved sports, but it was a conflicted type thing. I was there just to please him. And when I did good, there was a nodding approval, but it was just always just pressure. Don't screw up, be perfect. And this one, I didn't want to be around him. I would get off the school bus, and as I'm walking home, I would peek over the hill to see if his car was in the driveway. And I remember that if his car wasn't there, there was relief that came over me, like I could go home. And if I saw his car, it was like, I just didn't want to go home, because it just represented a place where you're not going to measure up. And the frustrating thing was that he could do everything with great competence. I mean, he was in great shape. He could do finished carpentry work. He could pull an engine out of a car and rebuild it. So he had all the skills. And I remember, getting the wrong wrench one time and him yelling. And I just thought, screw this. I don't want anything to do with tools. I don't want anything to do with cars. I don't want to do anything with that. I just didn't want to be around him. And when I was 15, I was a sophomore in high school, and my mom left the house, took a friend of mine home with my dad, and she came home alone and told me that my dad had died. He had a massive heart attack at 37. And I remember just being split in my emotions. I remember part of me being really sad, but then part of me being really glad. And it wasn't that I hated him, I just didn't want to be around him. I didn't want to be reminded of how imperfect I was. So when he died, my hair got long, I started drinking, I started just doing whatever I wanted to do. I had a big anger issue. And I went on a 10-year course of pornography, promiscuity, alcohol, for 10 years. And it was just escaping all that, trying to numb myself, trying to figure out what life was all about and not wanting to be responsible. And I was 24, 25 and got in a near fatal car accident, and had been reading some religious materials, some Bible tracts, and had gotten saved in response to actually the second near fatal car accident. And I gave my heart to Jesus and started following the Lord. And I had some of the same issues with God that I did with my dad. I thought God is waiting for me to mess up. So there was that, not God is watching over me, God is watching me, waiting for me to mess up. I wanted my kids to always know that I loved them. And so I would go in to my kids and wake them up in the middle of the night and just say, I love you. And they'd be kind of groggy. I would just do that with all three of my kids. I never wanted them to question, ever, if I loved them. And I never wanted them to have to perform for me. So that journey led me into ministry. And when I pastored, I would have a lot of young people come up to me and say, you know, I just kind of see you like a dad. And I would listen to their stories, and their stories were everything from abuse, abandonment, harsh dads that would, you know, say really mean, terrible things to them. And I'd see these guys, and some of them were accomplished in their own right. I mean, detectives, law enforcement people, school administrators. I mean, sharp guys with this hole in their heart, this void, they didn't have a clue about their masculinity. They didn't have a clue about the father heart of God. And so I always welcomed that. I always welcomed these guys coming into my life, and not knowing how to do it perfectly, but you know, they were all just looking to know, am I okay? And I think that's what this young generation today, they want to know. Are they okay?